Imagine holding in your hand a small, silver-colored coin that tells a story not just of money, but of heritage, of pride, of culture, and of the land itself. The Idaho State Quarter, released in 2007, is far more than just 25 cents. It is a window into the soul of a state that is often called the gem. State, a place of natural beauty, rich history, and strong identity. This coin, minted as part of the United States Mint's ambitious 50-state quarters program, became a symbol of Idaho's story, told through carefully chosen design elements that still captivate collectors, historians, and everyday people alike. The program itself, which began in 1999, was one of the most successful coin programs in American history, designed to release 5 new state quarters each year. In the order in which states entered the Union, Idaho entered in 1890 as the 43rd state, and so its coin was scheduled for 2007, nearly 2 decades after the program was first envisioned. The design of the Idaho quarter is striking, immediately recognizable, and deeply symbolic. The most dominant feature is the peregrine falcon, depicted with its wings spread wide. The falcon is shown in exquisite detail, looking fierce and determined, a choice that reflects Idaho's connection with wildlife preservation and the natural world. The peregrine falcon had once been driven to near extinction in the United States during the mid-20th century due to the widespread use of pesticides, but through conservation efforts, the species rebounded and became a national symbol of resilience and survival. Idaho played a special role in these recovery efforts, and thus the choice of the falcon was more than fitting. It was a tribute to both the bird's triumph and the state's commitment to protecting its wilderness. Beside the falcon is the outline of the state of Idaho itself, a simple yet powerful visual anchor that grounds the design and makes it unmistakably tied to the state the outline reinforces. The sense of geography, identity, and pride, showing Idaho as a unique piece of the American puzzle, and just above the falcon is the state motto Esto Perpetua, which translates to "Let it be perpetual" or "May it last forever," a phrase that captures the enduring spirit of the state, its people, and its natural beauty. This motto has deep roots in Idaho history, adopted in 1890 when Idaho became a state. It reflects the desire for lasting prosperity, justice, and preservation of the land. To fully understand the coin, one must step back and look at Idaho itself, a state with a fascinating past stretching from indigenous cultures to the fur trade to mining, agriculture, and modern development. Long before European settlement, Native American tribes such as the Nez Perce, the Shoshone-Bannock, and the Coeur d'Alene lived in these lands, developing deep spiritual and practical connections to the rivers, mountains, and plains. Their legacy is inseparable from Idaho's history, and their presence is echoed in the landscapes that are now symbolized in the falcon soaring above the state outline. The arrival of fur trappers and explorers in the early 19th century opened the region to trade and settlement, eventually followed by waves of miners and pioneers. The discovery of gold and silver brought attention and migration to Idaho's rugged lands during the mid-1800s. The very idea of Idaho as a state was forged in the fires of opportunity, hardship, and frontier resilience. By the time Idaho entered the Union in 1890, its identity as the gem state was already forming due to its vast natural resources, not only precious metals, but also fertile lands, forests, and eventually hydroelectric power. The gem state nickname is not just about gemstones, though Idaho does produce rare star garnets. It also refers more broadly to Idaho being a gem among states for its resources and beauty. The quarter's falcon, therefore, becomes a modern emblem layered upon this long history of connection to land and survival against the odds. The process of designing the Idaho quarter involved both state and federal input. Citizens of Idaho submitted ideas, and the state government narrowed them down to a set of finalists. The United States Mint then worked with Idaho officials to create the final version that we see today. The falcon design was chosen over other ideas that might have included landscapes, symbols of mining or agriculture, or references to Native American heritage. The choice of the falcon was bold and contemporary, and it gave the Idaho coin a modern and timeless appeal. When it was released in 2007, it immediately stood out from the rest of the state quarters for its dramatic imagery, collectors' today value. The Idaho quarter, both for its symbolic meaning and for its place within the 50 state quarters program, millions were minted in Philadelphia and Denver, and some in San Francisco for proof sets, while circulation quarters are common and worth face value. High-grade uncirculated or proof examples, especially with errors or rare mint marks, can carry premiums in the numismatic market. The coin, therefore, straddles the line between everyday object and collectible treasure, embodying the spirit of the program, which brought millions of new people into the hobby of coin collecting. But the Idaho quarter is more than just design and metal. It is a reflection of the larger story of the 50 State Quarters program, a project that reinvigorated interest in American coinage at the turn of the millennium from 1999 to 2008. Each new release became a miniature cultural event. People across the nation eagerly waited for new quarters to appear. In change, children collected them in maps and folders. Grandparents gave them as gifts. Teachers used them in classrooms to teach geography, history, and civics. By the time Idaho's coin was released, the program had already become a phenomenon, and Idaho's bold design added another layer of energy. To the national conversation, spending time with this coin is like unfolding a narrative of resilience, of identity, and of the enduring human connection to nature. The falcon itself invites us to consider the power of flight, freedom, and vision. The motto Esto Perpetua challenges us to think about permanence, about what it means to preserve a way of life and natural beauty in a world that is constantly changing. And the outline of Idaho reminds us that behind every coin there is a land and a people whose story is worth remembering. As we continue to explore the meaning of the Idaho quarter, we can also connect it to broader themes in American history. The revival of the peregrine falcon parallels the revival of interest in conservation. Across the United States during the late 20th century, the environmental movement gained momentum, leading to legislation such as the Endangered Species Act of 1973. Idaho's quarter, therefore, is not just about one bird, it is about a national story of ecological awareness and responsibility. When we think about the long arc of Idaho's history, from the first peoples who walked its valleys to the pioneers who braved its mountains, from miners searching for fortune to modern conservationists striving to protect its treasures, we can see that the Idaho quarter is not simply a coin, but a canvas of identity. It bridges the past with the present and invites us to carry its message into the future. In this way, the Idaho quarter, like the motto etched upon it, may itself be perpetual, living on in the hands of collectors, in the pockets of citizens, and in the history of the United States Mint. The story of the 2007 Wyoming State Quarter is not just the story of a coin, it is the story of the American West, the rugged land of cowboys and open plains, and the enduring symbol of independence that has shaped both state and national identity. When the United States Mint launched the 50 State Quarters program in 1999, it was one of the most ambitious and widely successful coin programs in American history, and by 2007, the series had already captured the imagination of millions of collectors and everyday Americans who eagerly awaited the release of each new design. Wyoming was the 44th state to enter the Union in 1890, and it became the 44th state honored in the Quarter Series. And with its release in 2007, the coin instantly stood out for its striking simplicity and bold representation of the cowboy heritage that Wyoming holds so dearly. The design features the legendary bucking horse and rider, a symbol that has long been associated with Wyoming and its deep-rooted cowboy traditions. This emblem is not just a decorative choice. It is a symbol that has been a part of Wyoming's culture for over a century, representing freedom, hard work, and the enduring frontier spirit. To understand why the Wyoming quarter looks the way it does, one must go back to the history of the bucking horse and rider symbol. It first appeared around World War I as a mark of identity for Wyoming soldiers, and it later became an official state trademark. By 1936, it has appeared on license plates since 1936 and is one of the most recognized state symbols in the entire United States. The cowboy image represents the untamed spirit of the West, and it perfectly captures the identity Wyoming has built over generations. The coin also includes the words, "the equality state," a reminder that Wyoming was the first state to grant women the right to vote in 1869. This bold move earned Wyoming its nickname as the Equality State and placed it at the center of American history as a pioneer in the women's suffrage movement. The combination of the bucking horse and rider and the Equality State motto makes this coin a powerful tribute to Wyoming's cultural and political identity. The production of the Wyoming quarter was carried out at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints in 2007, with hundreds of millions struck for circulation. The mintage numbers were impressive. Philadelphia produced over 250 million coins, while Denver produced more than 220 million. This massive production ensured that the Wyoming quarter circulated widely across the nation and became one of the most accessible coins in the entire series. Yet, despite the high mintage, certain versions and errors have made this coin especially intriguing for collectors. One of the most discussed aspects of the Wyoming quarter design is its extreme simplicity. Some praised the coin for its bold and clean image, while others criticized it for being too plain. Compared to more intricate state quarter designs, however, that very simplicity makes it stand out among the 50 designs because it tells a story without clutter. It shows a cowboy on a bucking horse and nothing more, because in Wyoming, that is all you need to understand. The spirit of the land collectors today look for special varieties of the 2007 Wyoming quarter, including error coins such as doubled dies, die cracks off center strikes, and missing clad layer errors, which can make ordinary looking quarters worth much more than face value. Many collectors have documented examples where the detail in the horse or rider appears distorted due to die wear, and some coins show dramatic cracks across the design which have become highly sought after in the error-collecting community. Proof versions of the coin struck at the San Francisco Mint in both clad and silver compositions offer collectors pristine mirror-like finishes and have been sold in special proof sets that highlight the artistry of the design. But to fully appreciate the Wyoming quarter, one must place it within the broader story of the 50 State Quarters program. This program transformed modern coin collecting. It introduced millions of new hobbyists who suddenly found themselves checking their change for the next design. Kids, parents, and grandparents all joined in the hunt. The state quarters told the story of America one state at a time, and in doing so, they created a living history lesson that people carried in their pockets. Wyoming's coin with its cowboy imagery carried that story forward by representing not only state pride, but also national heritage. The symbolism of the coin also connects to Wyoming's history of rugged independence, its vast landscapes, its reliance on ranching and energy industries, and its role in shaping the myth of the American cowboy. The bucking horse image is reminiscent of rodeos, which remain an important cultural event across the state. Wyoming is also home to Cheyenne Frontier Days, one of the largest rodeo celebrations in the world. And when people hold the 2007 quarter, they hold a piece of that tradition. The release of the coin in 2007 was met with ceremonies, celebrations, and statewide pride. Governor Dave Freudenthal and other state leaders hailed the design as a timeless reflection of Wyoming culture. Schools and communities used the coin as a teaching tool to highlight state history and the importance of its symbols, and collectors lined up to purchase rolls and bags directly from the U.S. Mint, ensuring that the Wyoming quarter would be preserved for future generations. When we break down the historical importance of the Wyoming quarter, we see that it is more than just a coin. It is a teaching tool, a collector's item, and a cultural icon. It represents the courage of pioneers who settled the land, the women who fought for equal rights, and the cowboys who rode the open range. Its design is simple, but its meaning is profound. 4. A 2-hour documentary-style video. You can expand on the coin's background by diving into Wyoming state history, the legacy of women's suffrage, the evolution of the cowboy myth in American culture, the role of rodeos and ranching in the state, economy, and the technical aspects of how the coin was minted at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. You can include interviews, archival footage, and detailed discussion of numismatic values, while also comparing the Wyoming coin to other state quarters in the series. Its simplicity versus complexity theme would allow for deep analysis about how design choices reflect cultural identity. The Wyoming State Quarter of 2007 remains one of the most memorable coins of the 50 State Quarters program, not because it is the most complex or detailed, but because it strips away everything unnecessary and presents the raw symbol of the cowboy rider and horse, reminding everyone who sees it of the wild freedom and rugged independence that defines Wyoming and, by extension, the American West. This is why the coin has endured as a favorite among collectors and enthusiasts, and why its story can fill not just a video, but a lasting memory of American heritage carried in our pockets. Imagine holding in your hand a small, silver-colored coin that at first glance looks like just another quarter, but as soon as you turn it over, it opens a doorway into a story stretching back hundreds of years into the very foundations of America. Itself, the 2019 San Antonio Missions Quarter is far more than 25 cents. It is a piece of history, art, culture, and memory carefully struck into metal by the United States Mint as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program. This coin is not only a modern collectible, it is also a time capsule that tells the story of Spanish missions, native communities' cultural blending, survival, faith, agriculture, and the deep roots of San Antonio, Texas, a place that became central in the shaping of the American Southwest and the history of our nation. The San Antonio Missions National Historical Park was chosen to be honored on a quarter released in 2019, and for good reason. The missions themselves date back to the early 18th century, when Spanish colonists and missionaries established religious and community centers along the San Antonio River. These missions were not only churches, they were also walled communities that included housing, farmland, irrigation systems, workshops, and gathering places for the indigenous people who lived there. One of the most significant features of the missions was the acequia system, an advanced irrigation network that carried water from the San Antonio River into the fields, allowing agriculture to thrive in what would otherwise be a difficult environment. The missions were a blend of cultures, bringing together Spanish Catholic traditions with the existing culture of the Coahuiltecan and other native groups who lived in the region. When the United States Mint prepared the design for the San Antonio Missions Quarter, the engravers and artists wanted to capture the essence of this history in a single image, and they accomplished that through a cross-shaped design that divided the reverse side of the coin into 4 sections, each symbol telling a critical part of the mission story. The top left section features a depiction of wheat, representing farming and agriculture, which were vital for sustaining the mission community and for teaching native inhabitants European styles of farming. The top right section contains the arches and a bell representing the mission church itself, which was the spiritual heart of the community. The bottom left displays a lion that echoes the Spanish colonial heritage, as the lion was a powerful symbol of Spanish culture and the Spanish crown, while the bottom right depicts the San Antonio River and its acequia system, the lifeblood that sustained both farming and settlement in the area. The obverse of the coin, of course, carries the familiar image of George Washington, designed by John Flanagan in 1932. But on this coin, Washington stands as a witness to a history that is much older and broader than his own lifetime, as the coin connects America's founding era to the earlier Spanish colonial presence and the blending of cultures that occurred in Texas in the 1700s. The San Antonio Missions Quarter was released to the public on August 26, 2019, with a launch ceremony held in San Antonio itself, attended by community leaders, officials from the United States Mint, and proud residents who recognized the honor of seeing their history struck into a coin that would circulate across the entire nation. This coin was the 49th release in the America the Beautiful Quarters series, a program that ran from 2010 to 2021 and honored 56 national parks, monuments, and historic sites across the country. The series was not only a massive artistic and educational effort, it was also a chance for collectors and the general public to learn about places they might never have visited. Before the San Antonio Missions Quarter holds a special place in this series, because it does not just celebrate a park or a natural landscape, it honors the human story of community building, survival, and cultural blending that defines Texas, and by extension, the United States itself. The Missions of San Antonio were declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2015, which underscores their global importance. They are the only World Heritage Site in Texas, and one of the few in the United States, and this designation highlights how these missions are not only significant to American history, but also to the history of humanity. As a whole, the quarter that honors them therefore carries a double weight. It represents both local heritage and global recognition. From a collecting standpoint, the San Antonio Missions Quarter exists in multiple mintages struck at the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. It was also produced in clad circulation strikes, silver-proof versions, and uncirculated sets. This means collectors can acquire the coin in a range of finishes from ordinary circulation wear to shining mirror-like proofs in pure silver. Some collectors pursue these coins in bulk, while others carefully preserve them in albums. The 2019 release also attracted attention because many collectors had already built enthusiasm for the America the Beautiful series, and the San Antonio Missions design was immediately recognized as one of the most distinctive and symbolic coins in the lineup. Beyond the physical coin, the symbolism of the San Antonio Missions Quarter resonates deeply because it connects Americans. With questions about heritage identity and the blending of cultures, the missions were not simple monuments. They were living communities where native people adapted to new ways of life, introduced by Spanish missionaries, sometimes willingly, sometimes under pressure. The coin therefore asks us to reflect on the complexity of history, how cultures interact, how power is shared or imposed, and how memory is preserved. Today, the missions stand as quiet stone witnesses to those centuries of change, and the quarter is a small yet powerful way of keeping that memory alive in everyday life. Collectors and historians often note that the beauty of the America the Beautiful program lies in its ability to transform pocket change into storytelling devices. A single coin becomes an entry point for a schoolchild, a historian, a tourist, or even an ordinary spender who simply happens to glance at the back of their quarter and wonder what those arches or that lion might mean. In this way, the San Antonio Missions Quarter functions as a miniature classroom, spreading knowledge about Texas history, about Spanish colonization, about native adaptation, and about the enduring resilience of communities as you dive deeper into the history of the San Antonio Missions themselves. You begin to see how much meaning is packed into the imagery of the coin. The wheat on the quarter is not just wheat. It symbolizes the introduction of European agriculture to Texas, which altered the landscape and the diet of local people. The arches and bell are not just architectural elements. They represent faith conversion and the blending of spiritual practices. The lion is not just a heraldic animal. It is a reminder of Spanish authority, the crown, and empire that sought to extend itself into the New World. And the flowing water is not just a river. It is survival sustenance and the human capacity to engineer life, giving systems in harsh environments. Every detail of the San Antonio Missions Quarter was carefully considered, and when you trace the story behind it, you find that it covers more than 3 centuries of history. The coin connects the past of 18th century Spanish colonial Texas to the present day when visitors walk through. The preserved missions under the care of the National Park Service, it connects local identity to national pride and even to international heritage recognition, and it gives collectors a tangible object that carries this entire story in their hands. So, the next time you see the San Antonio Missions Quarter, think of it not as 25 cents, but as a window into a story of survival, faith, engineering, agriculture, empire, culture, and identity. It is one of the coins that most perfectly embodies the mission of the America the Beautiful series to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, to remind us that our history is not hidden in museums alone, but is circulating in our pockets every single day. Imagine holding in your hand a small piece of metal that carries not just the weight of its 25 cents value, but the echoes of one of the most defining moments in American history. The 2011 Gettysburg Quarter is more than a coin. It is a miniature monument pressed into silver and copper that speaks of courage, sacrifice, and the turning point of a war that decided the fate of a nation. And when you look closely at its face, you are staring directly into a story that stretches far, beyond the United States Mint and into the heart of the Civil War, where in July of 1863, tens of thousands of soldiers clashed on the fields of Pennsylvania in a battle that altered the course of history. This quarter is not simply currency, it is a window into the past, a reminder of President Abraham Lincoln's words that a nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to equality must endure, and it carries with it the symbolism of the soldiers' national monument rising tall within the Gettysburg National Military Park, an image chosen not by accident, but with deliberate intent to honor the sacrifice of over 50,000 men who were killed, wounded, or missing in just 3 days of combat. The coin itself was released as part of the America the Beautiful Quarters program, a series that began in 2010 with the goal of capturing on coinage the natural, historic, and cultural treasures of the United States, and Gettysburg was one of the earliest releases symbolizing not only a location, but a chapter in history that defined the American identity. Collectors, historians, and everyday Americans who came across this quarter in their pocket change were suddenly reminded of the field where Union and Confederate armies clashed in one of the most ferocious encounters of the Civil War, and its design brought the memory of that field into the modern world. The Soldiers' National Monument chosen for the design is central not only in the park itself, but in the national memory of the war. It is where Lincoln delivered his immortal Gettysburg Address on November 19, 1863, words that redefined the meaning of freedom and democracy in America, and every detail of this coin pays homage to that moment. The sculpting and engraving process was carried out with immense care. The United States Mint artists and engravers worked to ensure that the monument was faithfully depicted, with its solemn figure standing as a guardian over the graves of those who fell. The release of the coin in 2011 was met with ceremonies and educational programs reminding Americans that coins are not just money, they are storytellers. They connect us with heritage, and they pass history from one generation to the next. When discussing the Gettysburg Quarter, one must also consider its place in numismatic history. The America the Beautiful Quarters program spanned 11 years, featuring 56 designs, each representing a national park or historic site. But Gettysburg stood out. Immediately because of its emotional gravity, no other site embodies the Civil War as powerfully as Gettysburg, and the choice of its monument for a coin elevated the series into something greater than commemorative artistry. It became a reminder of national unity and sacrifice for collectors. The Gettysburg Quarter comes in multiple forms. The standard circulation strike, the proof versions, in both clad and silver, the uncirculated sets, and the coveted 5-ounce silver bullion coin, known as the America the Beautiful 5-ounce coin, which transformed the quarter design into a massive canvas of history, weighing nearly 1/3 of a pound and showcasing the details of the monument in stunning clarity. These variations opened doors for serious collectors and investors, while also sparking the curiosity of young numismatists who may have first stumbled upon the quarter in change from a grocery store. The significance of Gettysburg in American culture has ensured that the coin remains one of the more memorable entries in the series, and to truly understand its depth, one has to look beyond the metal itself and consider the battle, the land, and the legacy. In July 1863, General Robert E. Lee marched his Confederate Army of Northern Virginia into Union territory, hoping to deliver a decisive blow. But the Union Army of the Potomac, under General George G. Meade, met him in Gettysburg. What followed was a brutal three-day battle involving nearly 165,000 men. It culminated in Pickett's charge, a desperate assault that ended in disaster for the Confederates and forced Lee's retreat south, marking a turning point in the war. And it is on this hallowed ground that the Soldiers' National Monument now stands, the very monument captured forever on the quarter. This design is a daily reminder of the cost of freedom and the endurance of democracy. For 2 full hours, you can dive into every layer of the Gettysburg Quarter. Its origins. In the Mint, its artistic choices, the cultural impact of the design, the numismatic variations, and, above all, the historical weight it carries from the battlefield to the modern pocket. And by the time you reach the end of this journey, you will realize that this coin is not just a collectible, not just a quarter, and not just a commemorative object. It is a bridge between past and present, a 25-cent monument to sacrifice and unity that tells us in the smallest yet most powerful way why history must never be forgotten and why even the change in your hand can carry the soul of a nation.